Hello everyone. This week we're going to take a look at writing really good code in Python and commenting. So a lighter week because it is the week before spring break. So we're not going to do a traditional book reading, and I am combining both the lab video and the class video. You're not going to be writing a single line of code this week. What I want you to do is study good patterns and practices for writing Python code. Now, this really extends beyond Python. It extends into the project, to any language you might be using, and to your career as well. Oftentimes, you're going to write a piece of code, and it's going to go to a engineering manager, or a test manager, or a QA engineer, or a test engineer, and they're going to have to understand your thought processes, understand what your goals were, figure out what essentially the code does, where it performs certain tasks, how you made your design decisions. And while oftentimes you write specs and you write design documents, in the end, the code that you write is the final product. And when testing or looking at quality assurance or performing a code review, the specs aren't the document that's looked at, it is your code. And your code has to be understandable. This means you should follow a set of standards and practices. Now, your company you might work for might have standards and practices for writing code, so coding standards. But if not, or if you're writing for a personal project, you should try to adhere to the style for that particular language that's generally accepted. So, for instance, in Python, there are what are called PEPs, much like requests for comments for various engineering projects. PEPs are released in order to provide guidance or provide information on the Python language. And PEP 8 is actually the Python style guide. Now, it's pretty old. I think it was written, 2001 originally. It was updated in 2013 by Guido van Rossum, which is the person who created Python, as well as a few others on the Python project. And this PEP provides general guidance on how to write Python in a universal way so that everybody reading and writing code can understand each other. So what I'm going to ask you to do is read two PEPs this week. We're going to read the style guide for Python code. And again, it's going to talk about different conundrums. How do you indent code? I've noticed this across some of the various group projects. And maybe in future courses I start with this in week 1. How do you indent code? Tabs or spaces? Spaces are the way to go. The tabs really aren't, unless you're editing legacy code. You should simulate tabs using spaces. Maximum line length, 79 characters. If you didn't know these things, you really should read the style guide. And this week we're going to give you an opportunity to do so. So, sit back. You're not going to write any code, but you're going to read these two documents. And let me state this as well. This is meant for guidance. It's going to be really hard to grade any assignment. And there is a lab, but I'll explain it in a minute. It's going to be hard to grade any assignment because everybody does this a little differently, right? Not everyone's comments are going to be the same. Some people might write multi-line comments. Some people might write a single-line comment. We talk about docstrings and what those are in a moment. Some people might like multi-line docstrings. Some people might like single-line docstrings. Maybe your variables are named in a certain way. The whole goal is, though, to generally adhere to it in such a way that if anybody would pick up your code, a rational, reasonable engineer would be able to understand it. It doesn't mean there isn't room for your own style and your own panache in what you do. I encourage that. I think everybody encourages that. But we're setting some realistic goals on how different variables should be named. Now, I don't necessarily follow all of these, and that's not bad. I don't always expect you to follow all these, but again, you should give it a try. And since you're in this course, a good college try. Making sure that you're trying to adhere to this stuff. So, two things. PEP 8, Style Guide for Python, and PEP 257, Docstrings. And what are docstrings? We haven't talked about those. Docstrings help define objects in Python. So, for instance, let's say you have a function. Here we go. Def KOS root. Docstring is a string right underneath that tells someone reading the code, or in a program like Visual Studio Code or an IDE, so an integrated development environment, what that method does so it can show it in autocomplete. So here, what does this function do? It returns the path name of the KOS root directory. Read this, but again, we're gonna do this in your lab. So let's talk about your lab. All right, your lab. You're going to get some code that you've seen before. So this is the solution file to the secret image project for week 7. And if you've noticed, and I'm not going to scroll to reset image because I am making this video while you're still working on the lab. What you're going to do here is comment the code. And if you wish to, rename any variables that might be wrong and don't conform to the style guide. So imagine you're handing me this code. Imagine you wrote this code, and some of which this week you wrote this code. You're handing me this code. I've never touched this project before. I don't know what was going through your head when you wrote this. I need to be able to understand what you did. So what I would like you to do is make an attempt to comment related lines of code. Now, you might say this is arbitrary. It in many ways is a bit arbitrary. I'm going to have to outline a certain number of minimum requirements. So, for instance, in the rubric, I'll say you have to have at least 15 comments. Every function needs to have a docstring, but where you put your comments, that's up to you. It's about a message you're trying to convey to me. So, for instance, let's talk about this write image to red channel. I love giving little bits of a solution to a lab to you. So I do it every week. So let's do it. All right. Let's talk about docstrings. You're going to read about docstrings. You're going to find it's a way to convey what an object does in Python. So here, write message to red channel. What does it do? Let's create a docstring. 3 open quotes. And 3 close quotes. I'll just close it right there so it doesn't make everything turn orange. Write message to red channel. This function writes a secret message to an image's red channel. There we go. And look, I'm under 79 characters. Now, if this had to extend beyond 79 characters per the style guide, let's look here. Multi-line docstrings. This is in PEP 257. We scroll down and see how does this work. Here we go. So let's say I had to do multiple lines. This function writes a secret image to an image's red channel. It does not return a value. There we go. So I've just explained what this function does, and I've done that using a docstring. All right. You could do this in different ways. Again, let's say this is continuing a sentence. You will not want to put that blank line there, right? So read the PEPs, figure out what it does, what the style is, and then implement it in the code file. All right, so what I've done is I've written a docstring. Now let's write some comments. So this first line, it's always good to leave a space here, right? You want the code to look good too. And I know, again, that sounds arbitrary, but code is art in a certain way. And if I look at this file, it should look appealing. It should look like it was well written, well formatted, follows a pattern that is good to the eye and good to read. If it's junk code, if it's all messy, I don't want to read it. Right? I'm just going to throw it away, pass it back, and say clean it up. It needs to be appealing. It needs to make sense. So let's talk about comments. Now I'm going to, for this file, say you need to put at least 15 comments. Again, you can put the comments where you want, but the goal of this is to put comments in places where if I'm a reader of the code and I have no idea what it's doing, you want to tell me what it does. So here, image equals capital I image.open file. Open an image file that was passed to the function. You see now that might not be so clear. Open an image file that was passed to the function. Well, we passed the string file name. Open a image that was passed to the function via the file string. There we go. So I wasn't passing an image to the function, rather I was passing a string that represented the file name of that image. There we go. All right, maybe in this line it's grab the width and height of the image. All right, look at that. Now, you see, as I'm reading this, I'm seeing, okay, so I'm opening, you're opening an image. We passed the image name through the file parameter, so that was an argument. We opened up the image. Great, now we have an image object. Now we're going to grab the width and height of that image. And then finally, what is this? Message bits equals strings to bits message. What is this? Oh, well, I'm taking a message that was passed to me, convert the message parameter to a string of bits, ones and zeros, that, see, I'm going to do multiple lines here, will be written to the red channel of the image. All right. Now we see we have message bit counter equals 0. And these are related, right? So maybe I have a multiple line message that talks about both of these. So message bits is the string of bits, and the message bit counter variable will count off each bit as we traverse the image pixels. There we go. So as you can already see, my code looks a lot cleaner. I'm separating out related lines, so these two lines were related. This was kind of its own separate island. This was really its own separate island. If we go here, the while loops are a bit interesting. So we have these nested code blocks. Well, really, and I'm kind of break these out. Well, this right here, lines 28 to 31, and lines 42 to 44. These are all really related, right? So why don't you like put one comment here that talks about all three and one comment there that talks about all three. Down here with now lines 29 to 32, this is all about setting the initial values on those Y and X counters for each pixel and checking to see whether or not Y and X are less than height and width respectively. And then these now on lines 44 to 46, this is all about increasing the counters. So again, comment within these blocks. This RGBA equals image.getPixel, and then this print here, this is related, right? So we're just reading the pixel off the screen and we're conveying it to the user. So, why don't we have a comment here? Grab the RG value for pixel at XY and display to user. There we go. Now, we look at line 36 now. This clearly broke Guido van Rossum's recommendation about lines. Let's see here. 69. Now I'm at column 124, and really good Python code should only extend to column 79. So, these are things you should consider. Maybe you make this a multi-line string here. Again, you don't have to, but it's a good idea because then I don't have to. Let's say my image is a little bit. Let's see here, okay, and let's turn off word wrap. Okay, let's say I have word wrap off. Now I gotta scroll. So let's see, column 83. What column is this? 79. So this is what it looks like if I'm only showing 79 columns. So what the recommendation in PEP 8 is saying is that no line of code should extend beyond the 79th column. I should be able to read this whole code file without having to scroll from left to right. So something to consider as you rewrite this. Part of the assignment is I'm going to put that in there, that you need to make sure that no line exceeds 79 characters in width. So something for you to figure out. So again, the strategy here is, number one, read those documents. 2, read the code. Make sure you understand it. Now, certain things, listen, the string to bits and bits to string, let me just explain it here, what this does. All right, bits to string. String to bits first. You send me a string, hello world. Okay, I encode the string, and then I grab the bytes off of the string. All right, and then I convert it to binary. And in Python, and then I convert that binary value to a string. So I'm taking hello world and converting it to 100,100, ... In Python, it actually, at the beginning of the string, once I convert it to a string, puts 0b in front of it. I want to strip that off. So what I do here is I say, okay, everything from string index 2 to the end. Remember we talked about the syntax for strings and this syntax, using the colon to determine whether or not where you want to start, where you want to go to. So that's what I did in string to bits. Bits to string, okay. Well, I have the bits. So what I do is I make sure that 0b, what I talked about before, is re-added back onto those bits that I've grabbed from the image. And then the value, I convert that to an integer. All right, and then I go through and I take the bit length of that value, I add 7, I divide by 8, I make sure that it's a big int, and then I decode it back to a string. So that's what these two functions do. I used a lot of shortcuts, but if you're going to write comments to that, go ahead and listen to this video, and you can succinctly write what I said. And then that's read message from red channel. Reset image. Can't show you yet because it's only 8:41. How do I want to do this? Oh, that's what I can do. Hold on one second. I'm going to pull it off the video screen. There we go. So, this bottom part too. Hello there, how are you? I want to tell you a secret. The secret's Batman. You should break these up too and write a comment. So this is really one section. Reset image. That's one section. This is one section. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me what this does. There you go. Look at those. Make sure these lines don't extend beyond 79. But as you can see, this is kind of an easier assignment, I hope. Again, this week, what you want to do is you want to understand. You want to understand these PEPs. I'll put the links up. Again, the first one you should read is Style Guide for Python Code. The second one you should read is PEP 257 Docstring Conventions. And then apply it to the solution file that I'll post after midnight. Tell me what the code does. Give me some comments. Use good programming practices. Now, one last note, and take this with you into spring break as you're thinking about your project, because I know that's what you've been thinking about for the last 8 weeks, is nonstop, the group project. This is what's expected of you for your project. Clean code, commented code. I'm going to go in, and I've been pretty lax on the assignments. It hasn't been a grading item. code commenting, but it's going to be for the final project. It's going to be a good chunk of the grade because you need to show me that you understand what you've written, number one, and you need to show me good communication back to what would be your engineering lead or your QA lead, your test manager. You're handing me some code, and I'm reviewing it. I'm your code reviewer. I need to understand it. I need to understand. You need to get in your brain, understand your thought processes. And that's what we're going to do for the final project. So take what you've learned here, and remember, it's going to start being applied from week to week to week. Because as we go through the semester, my expectation is your code gets better. You get more efficient at writing it. It becomes more legible. It looks better. It becomes more functional. You're learning tips and tricks and speedy ways to write some code. And your grades show it. You're improving throughout the semester. And for the final project, you're going to be really good at Python. You've had 16 weeks to study this. You're learning how to navigate around the language. You're learning how to be efficient at it, and you're going to learn how to convey your knowledge to others. So with that, have a good week. Only one video, a couple light reads, and have a good spring break.